All right, Spanish banks getting battered today on signals of a Bankia bailout back out. And Greece's future in the Eurozone still obviously very uncertain. President Obama continues to push for economic progress in the region because resolution, well, that could mean re-election. My next guest here says if you want some signs of what's to come, you might want to go all the way back to 2008. In today's Reaganomics, we're asking, is Europe President Obama's Lehman moment? Larry McDonald, Senior Director for Credit, Sales and Trading at Newedge and former Lehman Brothers trader, joins me now. Great to see you. Welcome back.
Trish.
All right, Larry, so talk to me about what you mean here. This, in fact, you believe could be the president's Lehman moment. What do you mean by that?
Well, I've been on this speaking tour around the world, around the country. Next week, I'm speaking for IBM Performance in Seattle. And every time I speak publicly, the question I get is, how does this impact the election? Then we looked 2 weeks ago at the G8. It was a much more vocal President Obama. Behind the scenes, the administration was doing very, very powerful things to influence European leaders. And then over the last week, you see, if you read the tea leaves, the things that are happening behind the scenes. We had a 1% move up in the euro on Sunday to Monday because of this new potential backstop, this really bank recapitalization plan in Europe that the ECB might be supporting. So I think that there's tremendous pressure, and I think President Obama is a smart man. I think he's putting a full court press on getting something out of Europe.
And why is it so critical? Because what I would argue is that a lot of Americans, I mean, here we are in the financial world. We sit here and we talk about Europe ad nauseum, day in and day out. It has a huge effect in terms of how everyone within the financial community sees things. But the reality is, you go out anywhere else in the country, and it's very much seen as, oh yeah, that thing that's going on over there in Europe. It doesn't have a big effect on how people feel about things at home. Yet you're saying it could have a big effect at the ballot box. Link that together.
Okay, let's go back to 08. August of 2008. McCain and Obama were even in the polls, 46 all. Then you have a systemic risk event. Lehman went down, created all kinds of insecurities among consumers. Within a week and a half after Lehman going down, President Obama led in the polls by 15 points. So that type of systemic risk event.
I don't know. Again, I would argue with you, Larry, because I did a lot of reporting both within the financial space and then within the general news space. And a lot of the feedback I got sort of on the general news side was just, again, that people didn't see entirely how this would relate to them. And a lot of what I wound up doing was explaining how eventually it would affect everyone's ability to access the capital markets. And people don't always get that link. In other words, you're saying, and I hear you, Europe, if it goes south, is going to have a big effect on us. You can't ignore that. But the question is, do voters know that yet?
They will know it when the S&P, last August, the S&P lost 18% in 30 days. Okay, so the Dow Jones Industrial Average is off like 1,000 points between July 15th and August 15th.
Right.
If that happens again, essentially Mr. Market is in a tug of war with European politicians. They're moving too slow. They've had 18 meetings, 18 Euro summits in the last...
It's a political nightmare,
last
right? I mean,
year and a half.
It's tough here in D.C. Just go over to Brussels.
18 meetings, 18 EU summits, and they haven't accomplished what they need to do to reduce risk.
Okay, so President Obama then, in your opinion, needs to help them figure this out. But then, you know, if you're a European leader, you look at President Obama and you say, you know, I don't want the Americans telling me how to do business. I mean, so how does he balance that with trying to get this thing fixed, helping them to get it fixed, and also trying to balance the fact that the Europeans don't necessarily want advice from America?
Well, keep in mind, when Lehman went down, the ECB swap lines between the Fed and the ECB massively expanded. Last winter, December, everybody talks about the LTRO that was announced in December, but also behind the scenes, the swap lines were increased again between the Fed and the ECB. That's tremendous liquidity the ECB needs. It's a real ace in the hole that the president has, and I think he's using it behind the scenes.
So could Europe actually define November's election?
Absolutely, there's no question about it. And I think the progress that's being made behind the scenes the last 4 or 5 days, this bank recapitalization in Spain is a huge deal. they've got a lot of banks that have to be recapitalized the way we did in the United States. Hank Paulson went into a room, he grabbed the banking leaders in one weekend and recapitalized them. Spain's been doing this for like a year and a half, 2 years. They need a bank recapitalization, and they need the ECB and creative measures to support it.
And it sounds like you fully disagree with Professor Jeremy Siegel, who was just on saying we can insulate ourselves from Europe. We won't be that affected if there's major fallout. You're saying just the opposite, and that the president needs to do whatever he can do, because that might mean saving his hide when it comes to November.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, very interesting thesis. Larry McDonald, a pleasure as always. Senior Director for Credit, Sales, and Trading at Newedge, and a former Lehman Brothers trader. Thank you so much, Larry.